Saram students, welcome back. I hope you have done your exams very well. So now let us continue with our studies. Children, which lesson we had learnt in our previous class in political science? Yes, we had learnt lesson number 3, what is government? And in that lesson we had learnt why do we need a government and different types of government. So children, let us proceed further. Today in political science we shall learn a new lesson, that is lesson number 4, key elements of a democratic government. That means we will learn and understand the key elements that influence the working of a democratic government. Children, in this lesson we shall learn about South Africa, that is the injustice against non-whites in South Africa. And we shall learn about participation, that is participating in the democratic process of the country, and what are the other ways of participating and need to resolve participation, and also about equality and justice. So children, today we shall learn about South Africa and about participation, that is how do people participate in the democratic process of the country. Children, what do you mean by democracy? Democracy means the government of the people, by the people and for the people. And do you know the word democracy? It is derived from two Greek words, that is demos. Demos means people, and kratos. Kratos means power or rule. So democracy, it is the idea that the citizens of a country, they should take an active role in the government of their country and manage it directly or through elected representatives. So in India we know that we have a democratic government. Now children, let us begin with the lesson. Let us begin with South Africa. Children, do you know that South Africa, it is a country that has people of several races. Can you name the various races that live in South Africa? There are black people who belong to South Africa and whites who came there to settle, and Indians who came as laborers and traders. So these are the various races that live in South Africa. Blacks, whites and Indians who came as laborers and traders. Now children, here we can see an example. A girl named Maya Naidu. She was 11-year-old South African girl and she was living in the town of Johannesburg. One day she was helping her mother to clear up her old boxes, and she found a scrapbook that was full of pictures and newspaper articles. There were many pictures of a young school boy of around 15 years of age. Then on seeing that scrapbook, she asked her mother who the boy was. She was told that he was called Hector Peterson. That means mother answered her. She said that this boy was Hector Peterson and he had been shot by the police. Maya, on hearing this, she was shocked and she asked, why? Then her mother explained her that South Africa, it was earlier governed by apartheid laws. Children, what do you mean by apartheid? Apartheid means separation on the basis of races. That means the South African people, they were divided into white, black, Indian and colored races. And according to the law, these races, they were not allowed to mingle with each other or even to use common facilities. That means the facilities and the laws that were there, they were different for the white people, for the black people, for Indian and the colored races. So all the laws and the facilities were separate and not same. On hearing all these things, Maya, she was not believing her ears. And when Maya's mother was telling her about all these things, she sounded angry when she spoke about the life under apartheid. And her mother told her that in those days hospitals were separate and so were the ambulances. An ambulance meant for white people, they would always be well equipped, while one meant for black people was not at all maintained. And there were separate trains and buses. Even the bus stops were different for black and white people. That means in those days in South Africa, hospitals, ambulances, trains, buses, bus stops, etc. were separate for black and white people. And even the facilities that were meant for white people, that would be always well maintained, while those meant for black people was not well maintained. And children, do you know that non-whites, they were not allowed to vote, and the best land in the country, it was reserved for the white people, and the non-whites, they had to live on the worst available land. Thus, blacks and colored people, they were not considered to be equal to whites. This means they had to live on the worst land, while the best land was reserved for the whites, and they were not considered as equal to the whites. And Southwestern Township, that is Soweto, it was one of the townships that was meant for the blacks. That means one black township was the Southwestern Township, Soweto. And Hector Peterson, he lived here, and he and his classmates, what they did one day, they joined the protest against learning the Afrikaans language in school. That means this was the language that the whites spoke. Which language did they speak? The whites, they spoke Afrikaans language. And Hector and other school students, they were being forced to learn this language. But they wanted to learn their own language. And their own language was Zulu. So what happened then? The South African police, they beat up the protesters mercilessly and shot at the crowd. And one of their bullets killed Hector. This was on 16th June 1976. So when was Hector killed? Hector was killed on 16th June 1976. And the African National Congress, that is ANC, what was that? It was a group of people who led the struggle against apartheid, and their most well-known leader was Nelson Mandela. He fought the apartheid system for several years, and finally they succeeded, and in 1994 South Africa, it became a democratic country in which people of all races, they were considered equal. So in which year did they succeed? They succeeded in the year 1994, and they became a democratic country. Now children, let us learn the next topic, that is participation, and let us try to understand what a democratic government means to all of us. Now children, you know that we have regular elections, and the people, they make the decisions in a democracy. How do? They vote for their representatives, isn't it? Who makes the decisions in a democracy? People, they make the decisions in a democracy. That is, through voting in elections, people, they elect leaders to represent them. Then what do these representatives do? These representatives, they take decisions on behalf of the people. and in doing so, it is assumed that they will keep in mind the voices and interests of the people. That means we are choosing these representatives so that they will work for the benefit of the people. And children, do you know that all governments, they are elected for fixed periods, and in India this period is of 5 years. That is, after every 5 years elections take place in India, and once elected, governments, they can stay in power only for that period. And if they want to continue to be in power, then what they have to do? They have to be re-elected by the people. That is, this is a moment when people, they can sense their power in a democracy. That means if they feel the government is good, then they can re-elect it again. But if they feel that the government is not working for the welfare of the people, so they can choose any other representative of another political party. In this way, the power of the government, it gets limited by regular elections. This means people, they cast their votes to elect their representatives, and this is one way by which people participate in a democratic government. Now children, let's recap what we have learned today in this lesson. Children, today we learned about South Africa. That is, South Africa is a country that has people of several races. That is, black people who belong to South Africa, whites who came there to settle, and Indians who came as laborers and traders. And we learned about apartheid laws. Children, what do you mean by apartheid? Apartheid means separation on the basis of race. That is, South African people, they were divided into white, black, Indian and colored races, and they were not allowed to mingle with each other or to live near each other or to even use common facilities. And in those days in South Africa, hospitals, ambulances, trains, buses, bus stops, etc., they were separate for whites and for blacks, and the facilities that were meant for the white people, they would always be well equipped, that means well maintained, while those meant for blacks, they were not well maintained. And under the apartheid, non-whites, they were not allowed to vote, and they were discriminated against, and they were given the worst available land in the country, whereas the best land in the country, it was reserved for the white people. Thus, blacks and the colored people, they were not considered to be equal to whites. And Soweto, that is South-Western Township, it was one black township where Hector Peterson, he lived and joined the classmates and protested against the learning of the Afrikaans language in school. They wanted to learn their own language, that was Zulu. So the South African police, they beat up the protesters mercilessly, and they shot at the crowd, and one of their bullets killed Hector. This was on 16 June 1976. And the African National Congress, that is a group of people, they led the struggle against apartheid, and their most well-known leader was Nelson Mandela. He fought the apartheid system for several years, and finally in 1994 they succeeded, and South Africa, it became a democratic country in which people of all races were considered equal. And we also learned about participation, that is, people, they make the decisions in a democracy by voting, and they elect their representatives who take decisions on their behalf. And in doing so, it is assumed that these representatives, they will keep in mind the voices and interests of the people. And all governments, they are elected for fixed periods. That is, in India, this period is of 5 years. And once elected, governments can stay in power only for that period. And if they want to continue to be in power, then they have to be re-elected by the people. That is, they have to fight the elections again. In this way, the power of the government, it gets limited by regular elections. And the people, they can sense their power in a democracy. So children, can you say how would Maya's life be different in South Africa today? Maya's life, it would be different in South Africa today due to the following reasons. That is, practice of apartheid, we know that it is abolished today, and she would have enjoyed equal rights before the law, and there would be no discrimination on the basis of caste, color, creed and religion, and she would have the right to choose and participate in the government. Now children, let's have a quiz. State whether the following statements are true or false. First one, South Africa is a country that has people of several races. A, true. B, false. What's the correct option? Correct. A, true. Second one, non-whites could vote in South Africa before 1994. A, true. B, false. Is it the correct statement, children? No. So what is the answer? Yes, B, false. Now third one, people make decisions in a democracy. A, true. B, false. What's the correct answer, children? Yes, A, true. Very good, children. People make decisions in a democracy. It is the correct statement. So children, today we have completed part 1 of Political Science lesson number 4. We shall continue with this lesson in our next class. Till then, goodbye children.